Hey everyone, welcome back. Sorry it's been a while. We were busy moving. If you can't see, we still have some unboxing to do. But I'm back in central Iowa, so hopefully, if you guys are nearby, we'll see you at a swim meet nearby. Today, we are talking about kind of an obscure, maybe a weird topic, hormones. We're not going to be going through like teenage hormones, and I don't have good explanations on their craziness when they get to that point, but we're going to talk more about training and recovery hormones. So hopefully you'll see how everything kind of fits together. And hormones really have their fingers like in all parts of the pie. So you mess with one or training changes one, it kind of cascades and has a whole bunch of biological effects which you can actually see. So the real purpose behind today is when swimmers or parents come to you and they ask you like, why are we seeing these changes, or how is this training going to affect this, or these kinds of, you can maybe kind of fall back onto this concept. Well, there are hormones and they change with training and they change with recovery, and that's what causes the swimming machine to get better. This is kind of going to be a little bit brief overview. If you want to dive super deep, and a lot of these concepts go over many chapters. So from the biology of swimming, you'll see a lot of them kind of touch on the nutrition guide. I actually have I just got my own copy just a little bit ago to see how it looks. So you'll see that. I mean, I'll kind of reference and say like, hey, more information in these other sources, and if you want a little bit of budget help, use a code, get some money off. Okay, so there are, I mean, here's like a very small list of hormones. There's a lot in the body. Not all of them go into the blood. A lot of them are local. But this is kind of a small list of them and what they do and where they come from. And most of this does not deal with us. But I wanted to give you an example of how complicated this system is. And for you, I wanted to kind of narrow it down and make it more simple. So I divided it into two categories. So you have training hormones. So these are the hormones that help you survive training, like they're like your fight or flight response hormones. And then there's recovery hormones. So once your training is done and you're in recovery mode, which ones help you rebuild? So we'll go through a few of those. You don't have to remember the details, but just general concept in the back of your mind. And for me, it was always, in medical school, it was much easier to remember what a hormone was trying to do rather than how it actually did it, right? So insulin is a sugar, like a sugar monitoring or sugar, what am I trying to say? Leveling hormone, right? So instead of trying to remember that insulin acts on the GLUT4, GLUT3 receptors of these intestines, and then it goes into this liver and it causes glucose, instead of trying to remember all the little details, it's better to remember, okay, what's insulin trying to do? Lower sugar in the bloodstream. And so then it's much easier to figure out like what it's doing downstream. Anyway, general concepts. We'll start with training hormones. So the big thing, like I've been saying here, is maintaining sugars. So in the blood, if you took all your blood out and you measured all the sugar within your blood at one time, you only have about 100 calories of sugar, or glucose if you want to use that word. I kind of use them interchangeable for this setting. So that's not very much, okay? You can burn through 100 calories of sugar swimming, butterfly. I mean, what, in a 50, 100? It's probably all gone. Your brain uses a lot of sugar. It basically lives off of sugar. So if your sugar dips even just a fraction of a percent or just a little bit, your brain will turn off and then you'll die. So very dangerous. Insulin is a hugely dangerous hormone. So you have a whole bunch of, and insulin's the only hormone that lowers sugars, but when you're training, you need hormones to increase sugars, right? So as you start working out, the muscles are burning sugar, they pull the sugar out of the bloodstream, and so you get a little dip, right? So when workout starts, your sugars dip just a tiny bit. And instantly you get a whole bunch of hormones that kick in that increase the sugar levels. So I just have hormones here, hormones like epinephrine, so adrenaline, glucagon, cortisol. There's a few others, right? But those are kind of the big ones. And so they kick in to get your sugars up and keep them at a steady level, okay? Not so much for your muscles to be fed, although that is part of it, but also to keep your brain alive, and therefore you alive, okay? So going through, so let's just kind of see where all these sugars are moving around and where they come from. So muscles also like to run on sugar, especially during high intensity swimming, right? And it can get that sugar from two places. From inside the muscle, which is way more efficient. So these blue, everything blue is sugar here. The sugar that's stored inside the muscle, way more easy to access, right? That's like the gas tank in your car. You just put the pedal down, the gas flows into the engine, we get movement, right? But it's a very small gas tank. 30, 40 minutes, you start running out. And you can also have sugar stored in the liver, and the liver has a special mechanism, which we'll show later, where it can actually create sugar from protein, which muscles cannot do. And so the liver can dump that sugar into the bloodstream. This is a blood vessel here, and the sugar bits, they kind of float around, and then they jump into the muscle cell and they fuel the muscle. Much longer process, right? It's like going to the gas station to get your gas to run the car. So it takes much longer. You can't run the engine quite as hot, and again, more details in books and courses in otherwise areas. So the big two hormones that do this are glucagon and epinephrine, right? So they both affect the sugar that's in the muscle cell and in the liver. So glucagon, let's kind of separate them out. Glucagon really works in the liver. So I have these separated out. So here's muscle up here. And the muscle's job is to create energy and movement, right? So it takes sugar as a fuel. It runs it through an engine called glycolysis, and the glycolysis spits out ATP or energy, and this is what creates movement. Rarely, it puts protein into the engine too. It happens a little bit, that's okay. If it happens a lot, you get something called overtraining, okay? We won't dive into it. So in the liver, you can have the reverse. Actually, it can work in the opposite direction. You can put protein into a reverse engine, basically, called gluconeogenesis. If you break that word down, gluco means sugar, neo means new, genesis creation, right? So new creation of sugar. So big long word, break it up. It makes sense. And so it spits out this sugar, and that sugar travels to the muscle, and then that creates another source of energy. So that's kind of how the system works when you're training. Epinephrine maybe works a little bit differently. It will increase the sugar that's used in the muscle itself, because epinephrine, its goal, like I said before, it's easier to think about what's the goal of these hormones. So glucagon, the goal is to increase blood sugar and maintain the levels at a certain range so you don't pass out and die. Epinephrine's goal is to keep you alive right now at any cost, right? So the bear pops out of the woods, epinephrine goes through the roof. It has negative effects in some places, but those negative effects take a long time to manifest. And right now we need to fight the bear or run away from the bear. And so it's going to burn everything and dump everything into the muscle to keep it survived. So it'll increase the sugar use in the muscle cell itself. So like, again, to our car analogy, it's basically going to open the pipes of the gas tank to the engine more so that you can get more movement out of the muscles. It'll also work on the body's release of fat. So if we look at our energy system talk, we said that there's multiple engines. One of those engines, mitochondria, likes to use fat. But you need a source of that fat. So you can get fat here in the muscle cell too, but you can also get it from fat cells around your body. So in your, under your skin and in your belly. And epinephrine will help release more of that fat into the bloodstream so that the muscles can use it. And the goal is, in the back of its mind, epinephrine's like, well, maybe if I can use a lot more fat than sugar, I can spare the sugar, because fat is almost an unlimited source of energy, whereas sugars really have kind of a very small gas tank and very limited capacity. So that's one thing epinephrine does, but epinephrine Also, I mean, it acts on the nerves, right? So it makes you twitchy, it makes you anxious, which is a good thing if you're about to fight because you want to be like as like ready as possible. It also alters blood flow, and so we can take a look at how it does that. So if you remember in our cardio talk, we did it a long time ago. If you guys have been following along, we said that there's not enough blood in the body to send all places all the time. Okay, so the body has to kind of pick and choose where it sends that. So in this graph, so here's our heart here in the middle, and the heart has choices of where it can send blood to. So it can send blood to the brain, to the intestines, skin, arms, abs, legs, right? That's just a simplistic division. And to control where the blood is going to these different locations, you have little sphincters or, valves in the blood vessels going to those locations. Okay. Now the brain is always going to get some blood, but sometimes when the bear pops out of the woods, you don't need your intestines right now. Okay. So epinephrine will close off the blood vessels going to the intestines. So if you've had a meal right before you work out and your belly starts cramping, it's probably, part of that is because there's not enough blood going to your intestines, which kind of need it at the time. You don't really need your skin in that moment, so it's going to shut off blood to the skin. This is why people turn white when they're really afraid, is because the blood going to their skin has been cut off, and the redness drains out of your skin. And because your epinephrine wants the blood to go to your arms, to your abs, and to your legs. It wants it to go to the muscles to feed them, to give them more oxygen, to take away more acid, and to keep you alive and give you all the fighting power you need. So it will affect different blood vessels in different ways. It's pretty interesting, and also keeps you alive. So epinephrine, keep you alive right now. Coach puts you in the 400 IM. Epinephrine is going to help you survive. Great. So we can also look at hormones during training. So let's say this is one workout, right? So 30 minutes, 60 minutes, 90, 120. Okay, so as workout is progressing, the level of these different hormones, glucagon, epinephrine, they slowly kind of creep up as we work out. And that really makes sense, right? Because as you work out, the sugar stores are getting lower, so you want more sugar to come out of the liver, you want more fat to come out of the fat cells, so all these hormones are going up. You become more and more dehydrated, so epinephrine will start to cause your heart to contract more and faster as workout goes up because you're becoming more dehydrated. There's less blood coming to the heart, so to maintain the output, you have to increase the contractions. There's another hormone here that we kind of glossed over, cortisol. This is the stay alive long-term hormones. So, people call it stress hormone. It has its fingers in literally everything you could imagine. And its goal is to keep you alive for that long term. So it's going to keep sugars up. It's going to keep your kind of anxiety up. It's going to keep your immune system low so that you're not spending energy on that. And it will cannibalize everything to maintain that state, right? So when we put in the hospital, or for patients who need it, when we put them on synthetic steroids that mimic cortisol, they have a very characteristic progress over the next weeks or months. So they develop diabetes. If it's overdone, their muscles will waste away, so their arms and legs will actually shrink, but their body in the middle will grow, and they'll deposit a lot more fat in the middle and behind the neck. Their skin will get thin, their hair will get thin, their bones will demineralize. So this hormone, super, super powerful. Again, this is one of the theories of where overtraining occurs. Like if you're stressing kids so much, they're working out 2 times a day, they have jobs, they have school, they're out partying, they're out doing other sports. Once you add all these things, your cortisol levels are up here all the time, right? And so there's never a recovery, that never comes back down to rebuild all the stuff that it was cannibalizing. In theory, This is one of the theorized mechanisms for overtraining is that you get down to that level. Okay. Um, if you measured hormone levels in workout over the course of the season, we see something a little bit different. So down here we have weeks of training. So every one of these dots here is a separate workout, right? Workout day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4. So if you measure the hormones early in the season when kids are out of shape, the hormones are pretty high, right? Because they have to compensate for us being out of shape. So there's no mitochondria to help us produce efficient energy. The capillaries in the blood are not really well developed, so there's less blood flow than there should be. But over time, as these things improve, you need less and less hormone to get the same result. And so these hormones will actually start to decrease, or they won't rise as much during training. And so, you can actually kind of almost monitor how well your training is going depending on how much hormone you need to support the system, right? The less hormones you need to support the system, the better trained you are. Is anybody going to test this ever? No, but it's cool. You can prove how smart you are to your swimmers and your parents by explaining something simple like that. Okay, we are going to move on to recovery hormones. So again, like we kind of go over this a little bit in our nutrition guide and the biology of swimming, but here we'll go through like the hormone side of it. So I'll try to avoid going into a whole nutrition talk here, but there's a lot of overlap, so you might hear a bit. The way I like to think about it is when you're done with workout, you are three things. You're hungry, you're sore, and you're thirsty. Okay, so we need to recover and do all of those things. So if you're hungry, we need to refuel. If you're sore, that means your muscles are actually broken down. The proteins have like come apart, so we have to rebuild those. And if you're thirsty, you're dehydrated, so we have to rehydrate. So that's kind of how I picture it in my mind. And there's certain hormones that play into each of those three roles. And then if you understand how these hormones work and when they work, you can build a nutrition, like a generalized nutrition meal plan for your swimmers. Okay, so insulin, good for refueling. ADH, antidiuretic hormone, aldosterone, these are good for rehydrating. And then we'll touch on EPO a little bit for red blood cells. And then you have your rebuilding hormones, these androgenic hormones. So if you've ever heard of anabolic steroids, so these are building up hormones. And there's quite a few actually. I mean, at least, testosterone and other like androgen, like male hormone type things, which they are present in females, but to a lesser level. Those are the most obvious, but insulin has a finger in that. Insulin like growth factor, IGF, growth hormone. There's several hormones here that play a role. So don't think that there's just one thing. It's more complicated than that. So let's think about refueling. That's probably the most important, or the most that we can have actually some control over. So insulin, it keeps sugar levels lower, like it will reduce it in the blood, it will bring it down, but also it wants to send that sugar into the muscles, into the fat cells to refuel them, right? So muscles, when you're resting, like if I'm sitting here right now and I have a Gatorade, if my insulin did not release, all that sugar would stay in the bloodstream, and if you tested my blood sugar, it would be through the roof, even after one Gatorade. But insulin is very sensitive, so once your sugars start to go up, once they start rising, insulin will rise too, and that gives permission for the sugar, these blue lines, to enter the muscle and to enter the fat cells. So in the muscle, it will be used to generate glycogen or storage. It fills the gas tank basically. So you emptied the gas tank with epinephrine, insulin refuels the gas tank. And in the fat cells, it will turn it into fat if you overeat. Now, there is a bit of a loophole. Again, I'm going to stop pulling up the book in the nutrition guide, but there's a loophole. When you're working out, you don't need insulin permission for muscles, right? So again, think about epinephrine or think about workout as a I'm about to die scenario. So you don't want to wait for a hormone to tell your muscles to keep you alive, right? You just want the muscles to do their job, take the sugar that they need. So there's a loophole. We play around with that when we come to a meal guide. This is just another kind of graph that shows how this works. If you guys have family members or if you have something called diabetes, right? The insulin is not working as well as it should be, or at least the muscles and the liver are not listening to the insulin as well as they should be. And so your sugars they keep rising and rising, and insulin will go up, but it can't keep up. And so we give medicines, we give more insulin from a doctor's point of view. Okay, rehydrating. So there's a couple hormones here. You don't have to remember really the names. One of them is ADH, or antidiuretic hormone, which is another word for it is vasopressin. So vasopressin means constrictor. So again, this is another hormone that has its fingers kind of in all over the place. So not only does it help with with retaining water when you're working out, but it also helps to constrict the blood vessels so that you maintain your blood pressure, right? So when you start working out and your blood vessels open to all these different muscles, it'll reduce your blood pressure. And if your blood pressure goes down too low, your brain doesn't get enough blood. And if your brain doesn't get enough blood, once again, you have a seizure and you die. We don't want that. That doesn't happen to us very often. So this is one of the hormones that keeps blood pressure high, and it also keeps water levels kind of going up. So the important thing to know, maybe the most important thing to know about this hormone is that when you drink alcohol, it blocks that hormone, okay? So if you've ever noticed, if you're going out for a drink, even if you're having like a whiskey or something that's not very like volume, like there's not a lot of water in it, you still have to go to the bathroom more often than if you were just sitting there. The reason is because alcohol blocks this hormone, and so you can't retain the water in you as much as you could, and it gets filtered out into the kidneys and into the bladder, and then you have to go pee all the time. So for some of our older swimmers or college swimmers, be careful when it comes to alcohol. You don't want to be dehydrated before a morning workout. You want to be as hydrated as possible, so just keep that in mind, okay? Aldosterone is another like water retaining hormone, so it will retain salt. Salt attracts water, and so you increase your blood volume. And this is maybe something interesting. This is secreted at more high intensity levels. So if you never do race pace stuff, if you never do lactate sets, you may not get this hormone up to the levels where maybe we want it. Now, is this gonna like make or break an entire season? Probably not, but you know, something. Let's say you want to end practice with 100 butterfly all out, and the kids are complaining. Now you can take this little section of our talk and be like, hey, wait a second. There is a reason behind the madness. I want to stimulate aldosterone to retain your salt levels and increase your blood volume, which will help you be better at workout. So is it true? Is it enough of an effect? It's true for sure. Is it enough of an effect to make a difference? I don't know. But if you tell them and they trust you with it, then it will. I think so. I think it will help. And then they'll do their 100 butterfly and they'll do a great job. And you'll look like a master coach. So that's my goal here. Okay, I'm going to actually exit this real quick, and because I want to blow this chart up. I think this is probably one of the most important things that you can understand, and I want to make sure we do it right. Hey, I gotta switch, gotta swap. Okay. Whoops, did I do it wrong? Sorry, we're having technical difficulties. I need to minimize this. Okay, where's my marker? Okay. So in our cardio talk, we mentioned how the heart functions way better when you have a high blood volume. Okay, so the heart is like a balloon, and water comes in from one side, or blood comes in from one side. The balloon expands, it squeezes, it pushes it out the other side. Okay. The more that you can expand the balloon, the more blood that you can shove into the balloon, the more it will squeeze out and the more it can send it to all those different areas, right? So it can send it to the arms and the legs instead of just the arms. So we want blood volume to be as high as possible. So we have those hormones that will do that. So the reason I brought those hormones up is that they don't just rehydrate you from being dehydrated. They don't take you to the same level. They actually take you to the next level up, right? So these are days, you start from the off season here and you train for a couple days, 4 days a week, right? And if you look at your blood volume here on the y-axis, as training starts, your blood volume goes up. Okay, and this is a good thing. This kind of accounts for why swimmers will have kind of a rapid rise in improvement, right? The first day they can't do hundreds on 2 minutes. By the end of the week they can do hundreds on 130 again. The main reason for that is not because their mitochondria are better or their capillaries. The main reason for that is they have more blood volume, and you can actually measure this. So if you take kids directly from the off season, like they haven't trained for a couple weeks, and they start training, you'll see that their body weight will actually go up a couple pounds. And the reason is they're retaining water. And if you told them to track how much water they drink and how much they pee, you'll see that the water they drink goes up because they're thirsty all the time, and the amount they pee goes down because they're retaining all this this volume. Okay, if you combine that with heat, running outside in the hot, training in a hot pool, you'll hit another level, right? So heat is another stimulus to these hormones to retain water and salt and increase the blood volume. And these are very quick changes within a few days. And again, when training stops, these changes reverse, and within a few days you lose a lot of that water weight. And so kids, they take a couple days off or they go on a vacation for a week. They come back and they feel really out of shape. They're not really out of shape, they're just down on blood volume. So you can always reassure them, like, no, just give it a few days, give it a week, you'll be back to where you were soon. Now, this increase in blood volume causes another issue. A little side note here. Water, when you drink like water, pure water, you only retain about 70% of it because it's so there's no salt. Remember, salt attracts water, and so that keeps it in the blood. When we give patients replacement fluids, it's like a 0.9% salt solution, right? Because if we gave them pure water, first, they would die. Number two, they wouldn't retain the water inside their blood vessels. The water will, and even at that level, the water still leaks out everywhere if you give them a lot of it. So broth, or there was a study that Campbell's chicken noodle soup actually, compared to water, rehydrated you better than pure water because you retain about 95% because the salt levels were so much higher. Now, Campbell did sponsor that study, so maybe you take it with a grain of salt. But regardless, like having more salt in your water or broth actually rehydrates you better than pure water. Stuff like Gatorade and Powerade and these sugary drinks, they do an okay job. They're mainly designed to replace the sugar, not quite as much for rehydrating. Like, it's not going to be as good as broth because there's not enough salt in there. Anyway, that's a tangent. Remember, we were talking about blood volume. Maybe I need to switch these slides around. We're talking about blood volume. So this creates a problem. When your blood volume goes up, you have another issue, is that you diluted your red blood cells, right? So here's a blood vessel, and here we have all our little red blood cells in the blood vessel, and they're all nice and concentrated. This is normal. This is without training and low blood volume. As you start training and your blood volume goes up, well, that's all water, right, within a couple days. And so what happens is you dilute, to a little degree, you dilute the blood. And so the red blood cells are now spaced out. And this actually has a name. This is called athlete's anemia. It's not like a pathologic problem, right? Your kids are not going to be tired. But you only, because you still have the same amount of red blood cells in your body and they're circulating, so things will be fine. But the body wants to respond to this. It doesn't want anemia. When your kidneys, they're the ones who sense the concentration of red blood cells in the blood. When they see that there's been a dilution, it releases a hormone called EPO, right? I'm sure you guys have heard of EPO. They used to kind of use this to dope, especially in the Tour de France. The problem is if you overdo it, you'll strain your heart too much, have a heart attack, and die. So it's very, very dangerous. When your body does it, it's very safe. So if we break down this hormone's name, erythro, it means red blood cells. Poietin means stimulate growth. So EPO or erythropoietin will stimulate the bone marrow to produce more and more red blood cells and fill up the empty spaces in the increased blood volume. So by the time you've ended training, you have an increased blood volume and increased number of red blood cells. So this takes a few weeks to process, right? This is not an overnight thing. So you have to be very consistent, keep the blood volume high at a consistent level, and it'll dilute for a little while, and then you'll get a refilling of the red blood cells later on. Obviously, altitude training is trying to supercharge this process by getting your kidneys to secrete EPO. Again, different topic. I don't know the details. There's the science is a little fishy on it. There's different theories on how it works. Different topic. Okay, well, I think we're close to being done here. Rebuilding hormones. These are pretty simple. Anabolic means to build up. Catabolic means to break down. So remember we talked about cortisol, which will cannibalize everything. That's a catabolic hormone. Anabolic hormones, the most common is testosterone, but you do have some others like growth hormone, insulin like growth factor. These get released about 15 minutes into workout, and they do kind of what you think they do. They help rebuild all of the proteins in the muscles that kind of got broken down, and that's about it. There's not too much to it. There's not much that you can affect on these, right? There's not like specific workouts you do. Actually, okay, I take that back. Some workouts you can do to build muscle mass, but that's not really what swimmers are after. Swimmers don't want muscle mass. They don't want to look like this, right? This guy is not a fast swimmer, even though his muscles are gigantic. Even for a short distance, he's not a fast swimmer. Why? Because he can't move, first of all. Secondly, you can't supply, his cardio, and his muscle mass is totally mismatched. And he will have a lot of drag moving through the water. We don't want that. Okay, so again, we got a code webinar 20 for those who have been able to stick out with my monotone voice explaining these things. So you can find a lot more on our website. Where is our website? swimsmarttoday.com. If you like these courses, probably, or this information, probably the most two valuable things are these bookstore and courses section. I just want to show you a quick thing that we added recently. We have these teaching swim strokes, the Swim Smart way. So we put together all these progression videos for all the strokes, dives, and turns. So there's totally free. You just kind of watch through them. Maybe it takes like 30 minutes to get through all of them. So if you're looking for more ideas on how to train kind of younger swimmers and teach them proper technique, this is another library. And we have an exercise dryland library too. So again, if you click on all these, there's a little bit of an explanation on how these are organized, but then when you click on each one, you can see all the videos and just different exercises that, maybe it gives you another idea that you want to incorporate. You can find them on the website or on our YouTube channel. And if you enjoyed the talk, please remember to like, subscribe, share. These are for everybody. So if you have parents, swimmers that are interested in this, share the video, let them know that there's something for them to learn out there. And we will see you next time. Hopefully we'll make these more and more consistent. So thanks for joining.